You're stuck in traffic, late for a meeting, your heart's pounding, your jaw's clenched, and you're cursing every car around you. But here's the question nobody asks. What exactly are you controlling right now? The answer is nothing. Absolutely nothing. Yet you're burning energy like it's your job. The Stoics figured this out 2,000 years ago. They understood something most people never learn. The difference between what you can control and what you can't isn't just philosophical. It's the dividing line between peace and chaos, between strength and suffering. And once you see this line clearly, everything changes. Think about your average day. How much of your stress comes from things you can actually influence? Your boss's mood, the weather, what someone said about you, traffic, other people's opinions, the economy, that email you're waiting for. Strip away everything outside your control and you're left with something startlingly small. Your own thoughts, actions, and responses. That's it. That's the entire list. Marcus Aurelius, Emperor of Rome, wrote in his private journal that we suffer more in imagination than in reality. He wasn't talking about positive thinking or pretending problems don't exist. He meant something more precise. Most of our suffering comes from demanding reality be different than it is. We take things that are fundamentally outside our power and exhaust ourselves trying to bend them to our will. Picture this. You send an important message to someone, hours pass, no response. Your mind starts spinning. Did I say something wrong? Are they ignoring me? Should I send another message? You check your phone every 5 minutes. You craft imaginary conversations. You build entire scenarios about what their silence means. But here's what you're actually doing. You're trying to control whether someone responds to you. And you can't. It's completely outside your domain. A Stoic would handle this differently. They'd recognize the response isn't theirs to control. They'd focus on what is the quality of their original message, their own peace of mind, their next action regardless of the outcome. The moment you stop trying to force what you can't influence, the mental noise stops. Not because the situation changed, but because you stopped fighting reality. Epictetus, who spent years as a slave before becoming one of history's most influential philosophers, put it bluntly. Some things are up to us. Some things are not up to us. Everything you do should begin with this question. Is this within my control? If the answer is no, your job is simple. Accept it and redirect your energy toward what you can actually influence. This isn't about giving up or becoming passive, it's the opposite. When you stop wasting energy on things you can't change, you suddenly have enormous power for the things you can. An athlete can't control the referee's calls, the crowd's noise, or the opponent's skill, but they can control their preparation, their focus, their effort. That's where champions live. In the narrow band of total control, most people do the reverse. They obsess over outcomes while neglecting the process. They worry about whether they'll get the promotion instead of focusing on doing exceptional work. They stress about whether someone will like them instead of being genuinely likable. They panic about results while ignoring the actions that create those results. It's backwards. Here's where it gets interesting. The Stoics believed that nothing external can harm you. Not insults, not rejection, not loss. Only your judgment about those things can harm you. Someone calls you a failure. That's just sound waves, just symbols on a screen. The pain comes entirely from the meaning you assign to it, and meaning is one of the few things you absolutely control. Imagine you're in a meeting and someone harshly criticizes your idea. Two responses are possible. First response, your face flushes, your mind races with defensive arguments. You spend the rest of the day replaying the moment and crafting comebacks you'll never deliver. Second response, you pause, consider whether there's truth in the criticism, extract anything useful, and let the rest go. Same external event. Completely different internal experience. The difference is control. One response gives your peace away, the other keeps it. This principle extends everywhere. Your reputation exists in other people's minds. You can't control it. Someone's opinion of you is their business, not yours. The past is fixed, done, unchangeable. You can't control it. The future hasn't happened yet. It's a phantom. You can't control it either. All you have is now, this moment, and your response to it. The weather doesn't care about your plans. The economy doesn't adjust to your needs. People will disappoint you, betray you, misunderstand you. And none of it is personal. It's just reality being reality. Fighting this is like arguing with gravity. You'll lose every time. So what happens when you actually internalize this? When you truly detach from everything outside your control? That's where the real transformation begins. Because once you stop trying to control the uncontrollable, you discover something unexpected about the things you actually can influence. And that discovery changes everything about how you move through the world. What you can control is smaller than you think. And that's the most liberating truth you'll ever learn. Your breathing. Right now, this second, you can slow it down or speed it up. Your attention. You can direct it toward this sentence or let it drift. Your effort. You can push harder or coast. Your words. You can speak or stay silent. Your interpretation. You can see obstacles as disasters or as data. That's essentially it. A short list. Everything else? Variables you can influence at best. Forces you can't touch at worst. But here's what nobody tells you about control. The less you try to control, the more influence you actually have. Sounds backwards, doesn't it? Stay with me. When you're desperate to control someone's opinion of you, you become fake, calculated. People sense it immediately and trust you less. But when you genuinely stop caring what they think, when you just show up as yourself, you become magnetic. Your lack of neediness gives you influence. When you're obsessed with controlling an outcome, you get tight. Anxious, you make worse decisions. But when you focus only on your process, on doing your absolute best regardless of results, you perform better, which means better outcomes happen naturally. This is the paradox the Stoics understood. Surrender creates power. Marcus Aurelius ran an empire, commanded armies, held the lives of millions in his hands. Yet his private writings reveal a man constantly reminding himself that he controlled almost nothing. The war would go how it went. The plague would spread or it wouldn't. His enemies would attack or retreat. His job was simply to respond with wisdom, justice, courage. That's all he could guarantee. Think about your biggest source of stress right now. I'm willing to bet it involves something outside your control. Maybe you're worried about how a project will be received, whether you'll get hired, if someone will text you back, whether the market will crash, if people will show up to your event. All of that lives outside your circle of control. You're pouring energy into a void. Now shift. What can you actually control in that situation? You can control the quality of work you submit, the professionalism of your interview responses. Whether you reach out first instead of waiting, your investment strategy and risk management, the value you provide regardless of attendance. Feel the difference? One path leads to anxiety, the other to action. The irony runs deeper, though. People spend their whole lives trying to control others and wondering why their relationships are disasters. You can't control whether your partner loves you. You can't control whether your kids respect you. You can't control whether your employees are loyal, but you can control whether you're worthy of love, respect, loyalty. You can control your own character. And character has a strange way of influencing the world around it without force, without manipulation, without control. There's a concept in martial arts: yield to overcome. When someone pushes, you don't push back. You redirect. You use their force against them. This works because you're not trying to control their movement. You're controlling your response to their movement. Life operates the same way. Someone insults you. You don't try to control their opinion or force an apology. You control your reaction. You stay calm. Often your calm makes them feel foolish. You won without fighting. Your flight gets canceled. You can't control airlines or weather. You can control whether you get angry or adapt. The person who stays flexible while others rage usually finds alternative solutions faster. This is why the Stoic practice of negative visualization matters. Spend time imagining worst-case scenarios, not to be pessimistic, but to realize you'd handle them. You'd survive, you'd adapt. This removes fear's grip because fear lives in the illusion that you need to control outcomes to be okay. You don't. Here's a practical test. For one full day, notice every time you feel stressed, frustrated, or anxious. Stop and ask, is this within my control? If it's not, consciously let it go. If it is, immediately take action on it. You'll discover something shocking. Maybe 80% of your mental energy goes toward things completely outside your control. That's 80% of your life force wasted on nothing. Imagine reclaiming that energy and redirecting it toward the 20% you can actually influence. Your health is partially controllable. You can't control genetics or accidents, but you can control sleep, exercise, what you eat. Your skills are controllable. You can't control talent, but you can control practice. Your relationships are partially controllable. You can't control others, but you can control how you show up, communicate, set boundaries. Even your thoughts aren't fully controllable. Random thoughts appear. But you can control which ones you engage with, which you ignore, which you act on. The Stoics called this the discipline of assent. A thought arrives. Before you accept it as true, pause, examine it, decide if it serves you. This gap between stimulus and response is where your freedom lives. Most people are controlled by their circumstances because they never stop to realize circumstances are just facts. Neutral. Your interpretation is where control enters. Rain isn't bad, it's just rain. Your judgment that rain ruins your day is the problem. Someone cuts you off in traffic, that's just physics, metal moving through space. Your rage is added by you. Traffic exists, your suffering is optional. Once you see this, really see it, something shifts permanently. You stop being a victim, not because bad things stop happening, but because you realize bad things happening and you being destroyed by them are two separate events. The first you can't control, the second you absolutely can, and that's when you start to understand what actual power feels like. Because it turns out the person who needs to control everything controls nothing. But the person who controls only themselves, they're unstoppable. Control has this strange paradox. The tighter you grip, the faster things slip through your fingers. You've probably seen this play out. Someone desperately trying to control their partner's every move and the relationship crumbles. A manager micromanaging every detail, watching their team's creativity die. A parent suffocating their child with rules only to watch them rebel harder. Why does this happen? Because human beings aren't machines, they're complex systems that resist force. The more pressure you apply, the more resistance you create. This isn't just true with people, it's true with yourself. Ever tried forcing yourself to fall asleep? Doesn't work. The effort itself keeps you awake. Ever tried forcing yourself not to think about something? That thought becomes the only thing you can think about. Control through force creates the opposite of what you want. But there's another way. Influence through letting go. When you stop trying to dominate outcomes and instead focus on creating conditions, everything changes. A gardener doesn't force plants to grow, they can't. But they can water the soil, provide sunlight, remove weeds. They create an environment where growth happens naturally. Your life works the same way. You can't force people to respect you, but you can behave in ways that naturally command respect. You can't force opportunities to appear, but you can develop skills that make you ready when they do. You can't force happiness, but you can build habits that create the conditions for contentment. This shift from controlling to influencing is subtle but massive. It's the difference between exhaustion and ease. One drains you constantly, the other works with life's natural flow. Consider your morning. You can't control whether someone cuts you off in traffic, whether your coffee tastes perfect, whether your boss is in a bad mood. Trying to control these things is madness. But you can control your morning routine. Wake up 30 minutes earlier. That buffer absorbs chaos. Traffic delays don't wreck your day because you built in margin. You can control checking your phone. Wait until you've centered yourself. Don't let someone else's emergency become your first thought of the day. Small acts of control over yourself create massive freedom from external chaos. Here's what most people miss. The less you try to control others, the more they naturally align with you. When you stop demanding someone change, they often change on their own. When you stop chasing validation, people start offering it freely. When you stop forcing conversations, the right ones unfold naturally. It's counterintuitive until you understand what's actually happening. Control creates tension. Tension creates resistance. Release creates space. Space allows natural movement. Think about holding water. Clench your fist tight and the water escapes. Cup your hand gently and the water stays. Same principle applies to relationships, opportunities, peace. Now let's address something uncomfortable. You've wasted years trying to control the wrong things. Years arguing with people who were never going to change. Years stressed about outcomes you couldn't influence. Years resenting circumstances that were simply facts. That realization stings. But here's the gift hidden inside it. If you wasted years on the wrong focus, imagine what happens when you redirect that same energy toward what you actually control. All that willpower you spent trying to change your partner, redirect it toward changing yourself. All that mental energy spent worrying about the economy, redirect it toward building skills that thrive in any economy. All that frustration about how things should be, redirect it toward making the best of how things are. This isn't settling, it's strategy. You're not giving up. You're getting smarter about where you place your bets. There's a concept in martial arts called minimum effective effort. Don't use more force than necessary. A skilled fighter doesn't muscle through everything. They wait for the right moment, apply precise pressure, and the opponent falls. Trying to control everything is maximum wasted effort. Controlling only yourself is minimum effective effort that produces maximum results. Let me give you something practical. Tonight before you sleep, write down 3 things that stressed you today. Next to each one, write whether it was inside or outside your control. Tomorrow, when those stresses appear again, you'll recognize them instantly. The ones outside your control, you'll feel them arise and consciously release them within seconds instead of carrying them for hours. The ones inside your control, you'll act immediately instead of ruminating. This simple practice trains your mind to sort signal from noise. Most stress is noise. Once you stop listening to it, the silence is stunning. Your mental space clears, decisions become obvious, energy returns. You'll start noticing something else. The people who drain you most are the ones trying to control you. They need you to behave a certain way to validate their worldview. When you stop letting them control you, they either respect your boundary or they leave. Either outcome improves your life. The ones who stay learn to interact with you differently. The ones who leave were anchors anyway. This is what real boundaries look like. Not walls, not aggression. Just a quiet refusal to be controlled by anyone but yourself. And here's the final piece that ties everything together. When you master self-control, you stop needing to control anything else. You don't need to control how people perceive you because you know who you are. You don't need to control outcomes because you trust your ability to handle whatever comes. You don't need to control the future because you're fully present in the now. This is freedom. Not the freedom to do whatever you want, the freedom from needing things to be different than they are. That freedom changes how you wake up each morning. No dread, no weight, just clarity about what the day requires and confidence that you can handle it. Now we need to talk about something most people get completely wrong. Emotions. They think controlling yourself means suppressing what you feel. Terrible idea, catastrophic actually. Suppressing emotions is still trying to control something you can't control. You can't choose what you feel. Emotions arrive uninvited. They're chemical reactions, evolutionary responses, messages from your nervous system. Anger shows up, fear appears, sadness washes over you. You didn't order any of it, so trying to control the emotion itself, pointless fight. You'll lose every time. But here's what you can control, what you do with it. Feel the anger fully. Let it burn through your chest. Then choose not to send that text. Experience the fear completely. Let it tighten your stomach. Then choose to act anyway. Acknowledge the sadness without judgment. Let it sit heavy in your bones. Then choose not to make permanent decisions based on temporary feelings. See the difference? You're not controlling the emotion. You're controlling the behavior that follows. The emotion passes through like weather. Your response is the only part you own. Most people do this backwards. They try to force themselves not to feel angry. Doesn't work. The anger just goes underground and leaks out sideways through passive aggression, resentment, or eventual explosion. Or they try to logic themselves out of fear. Useless. Fear doesn't speak logic's language, it speaks body language. The smarter approach? Feel it fully, let it peak, watch it naturally decrease, then decide what action serves you best. This is emotional maturity, not emotional suppression. There's a technique that makes this tangible. Next time strong emotion hits, narrate it to yourself like a sports commentator. Anger is rising, heart rate increasing, face getting hot. Hands want to clench. There it is, peak intensity. Now it's starting to fade. This creates separation. You're not the emotion. You're the observer of the emotion. That space between feeling and reacting is where your power lives. Expand that space and you expand your control. Here's something that will immediately test this. Criticism. Someone criticizes you unfairly tomorrow. Feel that gut punch reaction. That's automatic, not your choice. But what happens next is entirely your choice. Do you defend yourself desperately? Do you attack back? Do you internalize it as truth? Or do you pause, feel the sting fully, then evaluate whether there's anything useful in the feedback? Most criticism says more about the critic than the criticized. They're projecting their standards, their insecurities, their worldview onto you. When you recognize that, criticism loses its power to control your self-image. You control your self-image. Nobody else gets a vote. But let's be honest about something harder. Sometimes the criticism is accurate. You did mess up. You did fall short. You did hurt someone. That's when controlling yourself becomes crucial. The automatic response is defensiveness, excuses, deflection. Your ego screams to protect itself. Resist that. Own it cleanly. No justifications, no "but you also" statements, just "you're right. I messed up. Here's what I'll do differently." That response requires enormous self-control. It goes against every instinct, but it's also the response that maintains your integrity, earns respect, and allows you to actually grow. Defensiveness keeps you stuck. Ownership moves you forward. Now let's connect this to something practical that affects you daily. Your phone. That small device controls more of your life than you want to admit. Be honest. How many times today have you picked it up without deciding to? How many hours have disappeared into scrolling you didn't plan for? How many times has a notification hijacked your attention from what you were actually doing? Your phone doesn't control itself. You control it, except you've handed that control over through habit. Every notification you allow is you giving an app permission to control your attention. Every autoplay video you watch is you letting an algorithm decide what you think about. Every mindless scroll session is you surrendering your time to someone else's engagement metrics. Take the control back. Simple test. Tomorrow, don't touch your phone for the first hour after waking. Not once. See what happens. You'll feel phantom vibrations. You'll feel the pull to check. You'll invent reasons why you need to look. That discomfort you're feeling, that's the gap between the habit and your actual control. Sit in that discomfort, let it exist without acting on it. After a few days, the pull weakens. After a few weeks, you barely notice it. You've reclaimed control over your mornings. Same principle applies to everything else trying to control you. The news cycle trying to control your mood. Social media trying to control your self-worth. Advertising trying to control your desires. People-pleasing trying to control your decisions. All of it operates on the same mechanism. They trigger an automatic response and you follow it without questioning. Break the automation. Insert consciousness between trigger and response. Suddenly you're driving instead of being driven. This is the work, not sexy, not dramatic. Just consistent, unglamorous decisions to control yourself instead of being controlled. Most people never do this work. They spend their entire lives as passengers, wondering why they never arrive anywhere they actually wanted to go. Don't be most people. The steering wheel is right in front of you. So what happens when you actually grab that wheel? When you stop reacting and start responding? You discover something unexpected. Controlling yourself isn't restrictive, it's liberating. Most people think self-control means saying no to everything, living like a monk, denying yourself pleasure. That's not control. That's suppression. Real control means you choose. You decide when to engage and when to walk away. You pick your battles instead of fighting everyone that presents itself. You eat the cake when you genuinely want it. Not because stress programmed you to reach for sugar. See the difference? Control gives you options. Lack of control leaves you with compulsions. Here's where it gets interesting. The more control you develop over yourself, the less you need to control anything external. Think about that. When you're calm internally, you don't need everyone around you to behave perfectly. When you're secure in your decisions, you don't need constant validation. When you're clear on your values, you don't need the world to conform to your preferences. Insecurity demands external control. Confidence requires only internal discipline. That's why the most controlling people are usually the least in control of themselves. They're trying to arrange the world to compensate for their inner chaos. You see it everywhere. The boss who micromanages because they can't manage their anxiety. The partner who monitors constantly because they can't control their jealousy. The parent who demands perfection because they can't accept their own flaws. All of it stems from the same source. They haven't done the work internally, so they try to force it externally. It never works. External control is exhausting and temporary. Internal control is effortless and permanent. Let's talk about anger specifically, since that's where most people lose control most dramatically. Someone cuts you off in traffic. Your spouse says something dismissive. A colleague takes credit for your work. The anger arrives instantly, fully formed, demanding action. You have maybe 2 seconds before it takes over completely. What happens in those 2 seconds determines everything. Option 1, you react. You honk, yell, send the nasty text, make the cutting remark. You feel justified. They deserved it. Except now you're angry for the next hour, replaying it, crafting better comebacks, stewing in resentment. They've moved on. You're still suffering. Who's really in control there? Option 2, you pause. You feel the anger fully, you acknowledge it, then you ask, Will acting on this improve anything? Usually the answer is no. So you breathe, let it pass through you, and continue with your day. 3 minutes later, you've forgotten about it. That's control. Not suppressing the anger, not pretending it doesn't exist. Feeling it completely while refusing to be ruled by it. The same applies to fear. Fear will tell you not to have the difficult conversation, not to take the risk, not to try the thing you might fail at. Fear's job is to keep you safe, and it defines safety as nothing changes ever. But you're not trying to be safe, you're trying to grow. Growth requires controlled exposure to fear. You acknowledge it, thank it for trying to protect you, then do the thing anyway. That's not recklessness, that's courage. Courage isn't the absence of fear, it's feeling the fear and maintaining control over your actions despite it. Every time you do this, the fear loses a little power. Every time you avoid it, the fear grows stronger. You're either training yourself to be controlled by emotions or training yourself to control your response to them. There's no neutral ground. Now let's address the hardest part. What about when you genuinely can't control the outcome? You did everything right and still got fired. You were loyal and still got betrayed. You worked hard and still failed. The outcome was beyond your control. This is where people break. They think, what's the point of trying to control anything if the outcome isn't guaranteed? But you're asking the wrong question. The point isn't controlling outcomes, it's controlling your response to outcomes. You can't control whether you get the job, but you can control how you prepare and how you handle rejection. You can't control whether the relationship works out, but you can control how you show up and how you process the ending. You can't control the diagnosis, but you can control how you face it. Strip away everything outside your control, and what remains is still enormous. Your effort, your attitude, your integrity, your growth, your peace. All of it sits squarely within your domain. When you fully accept this, failure stops being devastating, it's just information. Rejection stops being personal, it's just redirection. Loss stops being the end, it's just transformation. This is what the ancient philosophers understood that modern self-help often misses. You don't control your circumstances, you control yourself within your circumstances. That's the only control that matters. That's the only control that lasts. So stop trying to control your boss, your partner, your parents, your kids, the economy, the weather, other drivers, the algorithm. You can't. You never could. You're exhausting yourself trying. Control yourself instead, your reactions, your choices, your attention, your standards, your boundaries. Start there. Master that. Everything else becomes simpler. Not easier necessarily, but simpler. You'll know exactly what's yours to handle and what isn't. You'll stop wasting energy on battles you can't win. You'll start investing it in the one battle that matters. Becoming someone who doesn't need everything to go right in order to be okay. That's freedom. That's power. That's control. You'll notice something shift when you stop demanding the world bend to your will. Mornings feel lighter. Conversations feel easier. Problems feel smaller. Not because your circumstances improved, but because you stopped trying to control them. You stopped fighting reality and started working with it. The Stoics weren't preaching passivity, they were teaching precision. They understood that your energy is finite and most people waste it on battles they can't win. Traffic, other people's opinions, the past, outcomes you can't guarantee. All of it drains you while accomplishing nothing but yourself. That's winnable territory. Your discipline, your response, your interpretation, your effort. Focus everything there and watch what happens. You don't become less affected by life. You become less controlled by it. Here's what nobody mentions. This doesn't happen overnight. You'll slip. You'll catch yourself trying to control your partner's mood or stressing about things you can't change. That's normal. The difference is you'll notice it faster each time. You'll course correct quicker. You'll waste less energy before catching yourself. Every time you choose your response instead of reacting automatically, you're voting for the person you're becoming. Every time you let go of what you can't control, you're reclaiming power you didn't know you'd given away. Most people spend their entire lives being controlled by circumstances, other people, their own emotions. They never realize the control they're desperately seeking was always available, just not where they were looking. Stop trying to control the world. Start controlling yourself, not through force or suppression, but through conscious choice. That's where your actual power lives. That's where freedom exists. In the small space between what happens to you and what you decide to do about it. Everything you need is in that space.